Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, an inspired conversation space between Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner on the journey of motherhood through the common thread of parenting, relationship, and sexuality as a path to consciousness.
We keep our conversations honest, our experiences real, and our philosophies exploratory. We believe that in order to raise incredible humans, we first have to raise ourselves. We know that in order to rock the family, you've got to nourish the mother. If you are here, you care about paving a path of conscious and intentional motherhood, connected with yourself and your gifts, and also illuminating your children in theirs so we may raise more whole humans who can impact this world in a more humane way.
If you desire to integrate your learnings practically and supportively, head on over to bridgetwood.life or julietenner.love to go deeper. And for all live-streamed pre-release podcasts and all our free content, head over to our free Facebook group, Nourishing the Mother with Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner. We are Julie Tenner and Bridget Wood, and we are so grateful you're here.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast is when you imprison your mother, you imprison yourself. And haven't we both done that, Bridget?
Yes, we have.
Part of what I love about our dynamic is that it has taught me so continuously how you cannot have a fantasy one way or the other, right? Because you and I have two completely oppositional mother imprints and yet both provide a prison.
They do. They do.
Like I just love that.
And I think we're constantly learning from each other with that, because it's like, oh, like when I think I want that, I see that too has its challenges. And when I state what I've come with, I see actually it has its gifts.
Exactly. And so I'd love us to be able to, chew that out. Yes. So we can all just let go of the fantasy that what we have is not adequate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or are you looking at me weird?
You kind of just cut out, but that's
okay. Did I?
This is the reality of
online through. What I was saying was let's just let go of the fantasy. That's where I want to get to, is so that we can both go, here's what it looks like to be imprisoned by assuming that what you have isn't good enough, or to just balance the perceptions around what you have. Yeah. Particularly if we're looking at it from the conscious parenting dynamic of the too good or perfect mother.
Yeah. And I often think that even if you're not deeply in the conscious parenting world, you're still at the mercy so often of that perfect mother myth, because it's just reflected everywhere. This idea of this pinnacle mother that you could somehow become if only you were less tired, more resourced, smarter, more beautiful, married better, had a better job, like, your house was cleaner, like, like whatever the thing is.
So true.
And so I think probably we need to begin at the beginning, which is essentially that when we embark on motherhood, we are exposed to our own attachment wounds that may have lay dormant for us. So you will either be well aware of your wounding mother story, which I think was your case, Julie, and therefore come at your motherhood from a place of, my duty is to ensure that that stops here, and that I will never be like her, and that I will do everything in my power to ensure that my children don't carry any of my wounding. So that's one way that you can come at it. Or the other way you can come at it is, I had a great childhood, and like I'm close with my mom, and like I'm just really excited to see where motherhood takes me. And then you crash right into, oh my God, what do I do with this baby? There's all these feelings in my body that I don't know what to do with. I can't handle them crying. I can't handle being away from them. But then I also feel stifled by them. And so what's unearthed actually is what we didn't know existed within us, which is our own attachment wounding, which we have buried over and are only invited into experiencing now at this point in our motherhood. So it can come at, when we first have our baby, or it can come at really defining times in our child's development, which is areas where we ourselves experience trauma.
What do you mean by buried over, the attachment wounds that are buried over?
So the way I see that is that we can dissociate from, we can find coping mechanisms through our childhood or through our life to not have to feel that feeling. Because we're either, in human behavior, we tend to either run towards a feeling or run away from a feeling. And when you're pulled into motherhood and 24/7 parenting, there's less ways to escape being with that feeling and the maybe numbing behaviors or distractions or other tools that we may have come to use to not feel that. So we bury it over with overachievement, with busyness, with codependent relationships, with food, with whatever that might be for us, until that thing no longer works and we need to face it. And so sometimes the journey into motherhood is what calls us to be with that in ways we've never asked of ourselves before.
Yeah. Amen. So because it endlessly fascinates me, can you do a little riff on what it's like to become a mother with the blueprint of a mother that you have on a pedestal?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I often think about, I try to track myself back. And I remember my husband saying, I think after we had our son, and he said, I really hope that we have, a girl as well, because, your mum has been your best friend. Wouldn't it be amazing for you to have that with our daughter? And I was like, yeah, it's true. But what happens when you have such a close relationship with your mother, you can also become enmeshed from the point of needing her approval, because you've become so identified with who you are in the eyes of this mother that you look up to, that without her approval or her acknowledgement or pride or support, you can be on shaky ground. And so what happens is you then either lose yourself in that and subjugate your own responsibility to your mother and still need to be mothered in order to mother. So you think she must have all the answers and you constantly fail and that you can't meet up to her. Or you look for ways to individuate, which, if you're not aware, can actually create walls up between you and her as a way to individuate.
I imagine that would be deeply painful too.
Yeah, and I think deeply painful for you and deeply painful for your mother, who's going, what happened? So because almost like that infatuation that you perhaps weren't aware of becomes dangerous to your own selfhood, it can flip into a resentment, which looks like you couldn't meet me. I know my child needs more. I'm wounded. I didn't get what I needed. I know that children need this, and I'm learning now that while I love you, you couldn't give that to me. Because we perceive something missing, we go on this journey to find what was missing, which leads us into a deeper research path of attachment theory and all these things we probably didn't know before we became parents, unless you're a professional in the field. And then you take this new information, project it back on the past and go, that's why I feel broken now, because you didn't do this, which can then create disconnect with that mother as a way to try to save yourself and stop your own free fall. Because if you've become so enmeshed with another, if you don't build a floor underneath yourself, you lose that relationship and you lose yourself. So that's the flip on the fantasy of the perfect mother.
What does that mean to build a floor underneath yourself?
To look for all the ways that you're not broken. And to cultivate your own strategies for resilience in the absence of outsourcing your validation or okayness to someone outside of you to tell you that. And to build trust, because if you haven't trusted yourself, you've waited for it to be approved of to trust yourself, then even just the practice of your own intuition and your own self-leadership is a way to build that floor. Because if you, I mean, we grow up cultured to seek approval, either from our parents or whatever other institution that is highly that is designed to imprint children. So whether it's parents, the church, your teachers,
the education system,
the whole system,
even our government system. I mean, it's all based on punitive punishment and reward for good behavior, and
you're either accepted or you're not.
Washed. Yeah.
Right. And so if we haven't resourced ourselves, and what parenting does is shows you all the little gaps of where that resourcing is missing in you, so that you can build it for yourself, so you can help your child build it for themselves.
It's so good. I honestly could just sit and listen to you about all of it, because it just I feel like I have all of these little pops that happen in my head as I create these connections, even as you're speaking. I just love this conversation so much. I don't think we have this conversation enough.
No, and I sit with clients and who have both your experience and who have my experience, and just challenging and stretching beyond the confines of but this is how it is. And this is my story. And I just know because X, Y, Z. And I'm like, no. Let's tease those edges, because there is so much that we're not seeing here.
What do you think the value is in teasing the edges? And can I confirm with you that what you mean by teasing the edges is stretching your perceptions to where the opposite is equally true?
That's correct. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. Freedom. So when we talk about this theory of when you imprison your mother, you imprison yourself. You're imprisoning her because in some way she is wrong. And so what that does is that then says unconsciously to yourself, or consciously, anything that I do that is in any way like what I perceive her to be, well, that's wrong. That can't exist within me. That has to stay caged and put over there for me to be okay. So essentially, whether you put your mother down in the pit like your story, Julie, or up on a pedestal like my story, you are in a cage. Because what you've said is, I'm only okay if I'm not like my mother, or I'm only okay if I am like my mother. And both of those don't account for your own fullness. And so you walk this tightrope of acceptable behavior and mothering and womanhood and parenting styles, lest you fall off that and either descend into the hell that is your own mother story, or fall off the pinnacle of approval that is your projected sense of the mother that you idealize.
So true.
Right?
Yeah.
And yet all our memories are doing, they're stored in our consciousness because we haven't got the full story. Every single thing that we remember now, we've held on to because, like in Inside Out, that cartoon, our consciousness has decided, nope, we're not ready to send that to long-term memory yet. You still need that for your story that you're carrying. Whereas in fact, every single memory is there for us to either draw on because it's part of our identity, or it's for us to see a little bit wider and understand and piece together the missing parts. The missing parts being that dark mother that I deny within myself or that I want to discard also had a light that I can't see or could never see. And that there are gifts to her, and that when I see her and see her more widely and understand how she was the way she was or could behave the way she behaved, then I can have a deeper experience of my humanity. I can open my heart to more people because I can see why she was how she was. And I get to unlock those pieces of me that I have said are not okay. And I may not perpetuate the expression of those things in the same way she did, because perhaps I've cultivated a toolkit for my parenting that means that they don't unleash on my children. But I don't deny them and say they don't exist in me. I channel them. I know what it feels like to feel like I want to unleash my rage, but I channel it. I don't say it's not part of me because I know it's part of me.
How did you, I guess what I'm asking is, how did you see that the other side, so the great and terrible mother, existed in your too good and perfect mother? Like, how did you see that? Or I guess I'm even assuming in that, did you or do you see that in her to the same degree that you know it to be in you?
Yeah, I do now, but I have to consciously work at it because—
What does that look like?
Well, because I know that when I feel like I'm having more challenging days, I'll be like, oh God, like a little bit like you and I do with my grandmother. Like, how did you like mother with like all these children, and how did you continue to wash and not hate everybody? And, you know, like all of that.
Which is even just fascinating in your lineage though, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's almost like the polarity swing each time. You can see that healing and seeking for homeostasis as well. Like, I just even—
Totally. Yeah. So for those who haven't heard, my grandmother had 12 children, was 39 when she had my mum. So my mum perceived a great disconnect between her and her mother and a lack of intimacy. So she then pursued motherhood much younger and really forged a deep relationship with me, which is a beautiful relationship and which I'm grateful for every day. But that then meant that I've then kind of gone and like tried to gather like what's also missing that I can feel epigenetically, right? But it then means that like when I hit edges, I'm like, God, like how did my mum deal with this? Or, you know, and then I'll have these senses, oh, because she didn't, because she couldn't, so she shoved us outside, you know. And so then it's me going, okay, I can feel this tension in my body, or I can feel what I want to do, which is like destroy what's around me, and then go, now I know she has both sides because I have both sides. The switch flick for them just looks different because the values are different, because we're different people, but we have imprints that are the same.
So can we just slow that down a little bit? How were you able, because I often find this is a trip for people, but you and I are quite fluent in this, I suppose, deja vu understanding of we don't have to know from our parents' mouths how they were with us, because we know that when our children at each age and stage do something that zero to hero trigger in your body that is like happens almost unconsciously and automatically, you and I both go, oh, okay, that's not me in inverted commas as conscious present here moment me. This is a projection of a past hurt. And we both know that the psyche is such that our child is the literal representation of how we presented in this unhealed, wounded memory. And therefore our psyche instantaneously has reconciled that's what it looks like to be the victim. That's what it looks like and feels like to be the person in power, which is what you want to be, because that's the perceived panacea at the moment. Are you having trouble hearing me again?
No, it's all good. Okay. It's a little break. Okay. People, please be patient. We are in lockdowns, so
I'm sorry.
Twigs slightly, but
okay. I am sorry for anyone who really struggles with poorer audio quality. That is a problem if you are a big audio podcast person.
We're just on like what are we on lockdown? I say like lockdown day 1100 because it just feels so many.
It really does. It really does here in Melbourne. Anyway, so you and I both understand that these moments of deja vu are not what is present for you, for us and our children as, you know, conscious humans in this moment, but in fact a moment of the past playing out in this moment. We don't have to know from our parents how they were because we literally become them in these moments where our children become us.
Yes.
This exact same moment. So you and I have that framework. We know it to be true. We've seen it to be true, all of the things. But that is something that is often missing for people. So how did you do that reconciliation in your own brain between, oh my gosh, you know, my grandmother who did everything and my mother who was so compassionate and gentle and beautiful and forged this incredible relationship? How were you able to, I suppose, in a way, dismantle that, to know that to be true of her in these moments where you're feeling it in you? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because, and ultimately I think part of that is deconstructing the fantasy that I had projected in my mind of her one-sidedness, to recognize that for my own survival, I cast out the parts of her that were like me when I get like that, because they weren't safe to hold in my memories. So in order to forge perhaps my value of motherhood, in order to perhaps forge my value of relationship, I've carried a story to perceive that this is the ideal mother, or this is how you mother. And because I also didn't see my mother consciously process feeling and hid feeling largely, like would numb, would repress, and which came out in like chronic fatigue for her, and, you know, like other like irritable bowel, and, you know, her body would do, her body would respond to her repression, right? And so I think I intuitively knew that. But so for me now, it is like a conscious process of making anger okay, because anger wasn't really okay. Like I see my mother struggle with the spaces that I hold for my children now, and she can't be in them because anger was not okay. So then that also helps me balance the perception of the all-present, gentle. She could hold what she could hold. She could be with what she could be with, and we all have a limit. And we all have, and this is why even in families, when, you know, women will struggle with what their partners can or can't meet, I just say we can all hold what we can hold. And we will build our capacity if we value it enough. So I know that my husband doesn't want to sit there and hold space for big feelings, but man, he plays like a mofo. He's amazing. And so just like my mother possibly wasn't wired to meet the level of anger that I potentially expressed. So she either distracted me, sent me somewhere to be with it, removed herself, whatever she did with it, I don't consciously recall. But she did what she could do with what she had. I think part of our healing comes from recognizing that. And that it's only the longer that we parent and the more edges that we take ourselves to, or are taken to, that we are then offered an opportunity to have more grace for our own mother's experience.
Yeah. So part of seeing the other side of her for you was being able to see the other side of yourself, and overlay that onto the philosophical understanding that we're all things. Is that correct?
That's right. And to see that when I feel like the, you know, the edges of like rage that can come up, and to notice what I want to do with that, like the animal in me who wants to attack, like know that feeling in myself, and then go like, or you know, that part of me that wants to punish as a way to feel vindicated for like me, the animal, being backed in the corner and, you know, sort of like fighting for my life.
Yeah.
To then go, whoa, like this feeling's feeling bigger than me right now. Like this feeling feels like I'm no longer in control of myself, which then when we no longer have control and our trigger is so big, the further away we are from truth. Because it's so incredibly polarized. We're only seeing this situation this particular tiny way because of what we're bringing to it. So the more and more times I think you get taken to that and you notice what that is for you, the more, when you also bring in like repair with your child, or you work on the embodiment of moving that through your body as opposed to pushing it down or making it wrong or guilting yourself and trying to kind of make up for your child because of your own fallibility, you then start to go, oh, okay, like this is actually like a focus or a way for me to break my own fantasy on myself. Is the more that you hold this one-sided vision of who you are as a mother, that you can only be that sliver of a woman, the more that all the parts that you deny build strength and have to come out as a way to break your infatuation with yourself as this one way. It's like you feed that beast the more you deny that beast's existence. The more acceptance we have for ourselves, the more acceptance we have for our mother, the more acceptance we have for our mothers, the more acceptance we have for ourselves.
We're just interrupting our podcast briefly on when you imprison your mother, you imprison yourself, to let you know what we've both got going on at the moment. So, Bridgie, what have you got going on?
Coming up is Disrupt, Revealing the Mother Wound, which is all about helping you pave a pathway of your own motherhood that is deeply authentic to you and like a cord cutting to the stories that you come with, which is really the pathway to much more enlivened and connected motherhood. So that's coming up really soon. Invite you to connect with that at bridgetwood.life.
And I have Sanctum coming up on the 20th of September, which is a 5-week space holding and circle facilitator training. And you can find out more at julietenner.love.
And so when we take them out of the cage, we take ourselves out.
Yeah.
But not only, and the thing is, even if we don't have to have an experience of a conflict with the women in our lineage, we don't. But the mother wound is still alive in us because we are bathed in the culture of the nourishing, all-giving, all-serving mother from the moment we're born. And the mother who is ravenous and over-possessive or cruel is the epitome of every dark witch or baddie in every film or text that we see. And so we're taught like a neural pathway that just says, don't be that, don't be that, don't be that, don't be that. Danger, danger, right?
Yeah.
But yet that exists within all of us.
Yeah, totally exists within all of us. I love that you said that too. It's so true.
Well, because we're not just like, we don't create ourselves in a vacuum, and we're not only the product of our family. Like, of course, we're here as predominantly a soul, but we are shaped profoundly and impulsive, and our impulses are shaped by the cultural conditions and sociological structures that we live within. And for white women, or for women existing in Western, any woman existing in a Western paradigm, that is largely a patriarchal construct of motherhood that is extremely limiting on who you get to be. It's not, and it's typically, it is typically, the patriarchal construct of motherhood is that you are generally white, you are generally middle class, you have typically 2 to 3 healthy children, you have a stable relationship, you're not single.
Heterosexual relationship.
Heterosexual, that's right. And you have probably a dog maybe, and you probably have like a university degree. You didn't have your children too young, and you haven't had them too old. And so you start to see like these boxes, and look at the ads on TV. Like that is how you are cultured into good, perfect motherhood.
Yeah.
And so whenever what we've internalized that we're told to be doesn't match up with the human experience of what it means to be us, it's like we have to shore up our own inner resources to not then cut off all the pieces that we've determined are not okay, based on a parental paradigm and a school system and an government indoctrination that says you are only okay if you exist within this framework and this box. And so it therefore is actually a revolutionary act to mother from a place of accepting the imprint that you come with, not from a place of subordination to that, but from a place of integrating that. And it doesn't mean you don't ask for self-responsibility within those relationships that you have with your mothers, and that you don't have boundaries and you don't have feelings that you want to express and move from, but that you do it from an adult place, not from a inner wounded child that says, I didn't get enough.
Yeah. Fuck, that's hard.
And I say that with enormous compassion because it is. Yeah. And every time I feel that child, like sometimes I'll hear myself think something, I'm like, fuck, like, are you like 12 or 30 something?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that's a bit that needs to grow up.
I know. And how painful is that?
Yes. It is. And humbling. So humbling.
Yeah, it's true. I really think that's happening anytime you're like playing out that fantasy conversation in your own mind.
Yes. Yeah.
Pretty sure that's where it's happening.
Pretty sure whenever I'm feeling vindictive or self-righteous, there's something that's, need to be worked through there.
Yeah, yeah. It's a big one though, isn't it? It's a big one. I wonder if it's worth just talking about some of the benefits of the imperfect mother, or even, dare I say, the great, terrible, cruel, and devouring mother.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I think we've talked about the drawbacks to the perfect mother, which I think is so beautiful, just to begin balancing our perceptions. So maybe it's worth looking at what are the benefits to the not good enough.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your journey on that, because you certainly went from there's no way I ever want to be like her.
Oh, not even a whiff. Yeah. I have an incredibly tumultuous relationship with my mother throughout my life. There were periods of time, years that we didn't speak, that I actively avoided her. Oh my God, I spent 10 years in just regular therapy and psychology, just trying to dismantle shit. We tried sessions together. It was a fucking nightmare. And I have such a challenging experience with my mother. So by the time, actually, me having children was incredibly triggering for her too. So she just disappeared from my life for my first 2 kids. She wasn't around. I think part of her wanted to be. It was this weird push-pull. And then somehow something would be co-created where there would be some sort of huge rift or argument or something happening in her life, which meant she couldn't be around me. So she was like literally both times co-created experiences for Heath and Jade where she just couldn't be there, particularly after Jade. So Heath was my first, so he was my biggest learning. My mum was still working full-time then, so she kind of wasn't around as much anyway. It wasn't really an option. I was already, and had been for many years, living completely independently with very little to do with her anyway. So it was probably less offensive in that. But by the time I'd come to having my second, I'd already traversed this incredible mothering journey, decided that I'd found my people and my calling in conscious, natural, gentle parenting styles or attachment styles of parenting. As you know, Jade was my full attachment experience. And it was actually her, so my full attachment child's, I can remember being in that space in my life. That was probably the most I fucking hate you and everything you did to me phase. And almost every act of parenting that I did was in some way a fuck you for what you didn't do.
Do you think that that was amplified because of the spaces that you were in, which was
100%
reaffirming this is the best?
Reaffirming, and also had all of the research about why I was right.
Yeah.
And all of the reasons about why I was right, and surrounded by women who supported exactly the way that I saw the world.
Yeah.
I wasn't listening to anyone who didn't support it.
You had the perfect echo chamber, Julie.
Yeah. Well, but I think we all do that.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
We do not like to be in spaces where we're not supported.
And, you know, I think that it's an attempt to love ourselves. That is.
Yeah. Yeah. But it also can go so far that it becomes unstable and imbalanced.
Yeah.
So anyway, what was I saying? My mum. And so I can't even remember what happened, but we had some huge fight. I can't even remember. And she just disappeared. I didn't see her for most of the first year of Jade's life, like just left my life. And then, you know, came in and out when Heath and Jade were little, but certainly not consistently. And probably started getting a bit more consistent. Oh, and then she left for overseas because then my sister had babies in Canada. So she and her babies were quite close together. So she left. So the mother who never supported me left the country to support my sister and be the live-in help for her, for both her children, for an innumerable number of months/years. So that was also an incredibly hard experience and still remains. This is why we go, you know, you're parented in the same way. No, you weren't. You weren't. We don't parent our children in the same way. We like to think we do, but we don't, because they all reflect different pieces of our psyche. And therefore we're intertwined in different dynamics and soul purposes with each of those children. So the way that we meet them is inherently different. And if you're in families where there's cycles of abuse, often there's one child who will take the brunt of that or absorb the brunt of that, put themselves in the forefront of that danger, in inverted commas, so that younger siblings generally, that they're being protected. So I can certainly see that that was the role that I cast myself into and that my mother cast me into. So my sister always had a much better relationship with my mum than I ever had. And that was one of the hardest things for me to reconcile, because I could not understand how she could be around my mother when this was the experience that I'd had and I couldn't be around her. Anyway, so it's been a deep and complex experience with my mum, and still remains the relationship that provides me with the most pain on an almost daily basis. So I have the best relationship with her now that I've ever had in my entire life. But I can completely see it's a relationship that has conditions. It's completely conditional.
And I also want to say too, like, that actually may be exactly what you need in order to exist with a level of wellness and well-being.
Yeah, maybe.
Depending on the nature of that relationship. Like, when we say that you need to heal, it doesn't look like healing and rainbows and butterflies and sunsets and perfectly ever after.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because the mother wound, like what we're talking about, is one that you may never be done with, but that you find ways to move with.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love the reason that I gave you that insight was just to be like, I get it. I have come from, I cannot tolerate you. You cannot be around me. You are the reason for all of my pain, trauma, suffering. You are so, you know, all the things. I just wanted to paint the picture of I have parented from that place of I cannot be anything like you. And a whiff of something that even remotely sounded, looked, or felt like you would send me into such a spiral of self-flagellation and hatred that it was destroying. So I more just want to paint that to go, if there's any listeners that find themselves there, I get it. Like, I get it. I really do. But what I was missing in all of that, more I could, how do I want to say this? Because I completely resonate with what you're saying, Bridget, which was, how do I see this other side? And I see this side of me that is cruel and likes to punish and enjoys power over and has an edge of danger where she could be the complete and total destroyer of all life, including the life of her offspring. So I totally know that place within me, that beast. So I resonate with that, and I'm so imprinted in me. It was both skill building and harder to be with, because I knew that was there. I had to build extra skills to be able to be with it and to be able to create breathing room around it so it wasn't reactionary. And also at the same time as doing that, knowing that it was a beautiful invitation into compassion for my own mother. Because in those moments where that huge overwhelm would happen in my body, and I had like so many more skills than her because of the privilege that I had grown up in that she never had. Like, if we're talking particularly about abuse, it doesn't just happen in one random family. That happens in lineages and generations of pain and suffering. It's not just my lifetime. It's not just randomly. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can. And I think that's a really good point that you're making there, because we can say all these things about self-regulation and conscious parenting, but we know that it is far harder to do those things in a cycle of poverty, a cycle of underprivilege, and a cycle of social isolation.
Yes, exactly.
Which were all things that your mother experienced in her upbringing, and that many people are experiencing in the pandemic as well.
Exactly. No, exactly. So she also is from a generation of motherless mothers. Like, every mother up until my mother had died of MS. Every mother, her mother, her mother's mother, her mother's mother's mother, every mother in her lineage up until my great and terrible mother had died. So she is literally from a lineage of motherless mothers, and yet I was holding her to the standard of the perfect mother when she had no blueprint for that. I mean, the best mother that she ever had, I can't imagine was particular, or mother archetype that she experienced, I can't imagine was terribly wonderful. And so here was this woman, this survivor of her own generational trauma and traumas, that I was making wrong for how hard. Like, when I think about the privilege that I inherently grew up with that allowed me to be able to even enter, contemplate, and execute natural parenting, that's a huge privilege.
Yeah, yeah.
So recognizing this beast inside of me, knowing that was exactly how she felt, only she had no tools, then I was kind of like, that's an extraordinary gift that she's given me. How can I possibly hate her?
Yeah, right.
For that, you know what I mean?
And so then that's that little tiny window of, like a metaphorical, olive branch, right? Like,
she felt like this. Yeah, I get it. You're here. I understand how you did what you did. Like, I get it. I understand it because I could, and part of me wants to, you know?
Yeah. God, yeah. Thank you.
So I think having enormous missing from that piece of me that wanted to reject everything about her was the gifts that she had given me out of that experience. And I do think that this is still the one that we struggle with the most. Is, and I think I mentioned it in one of the other podcasts, maybe it was even last week, where we're still assuming that the child that comes into the world is not a whole soul, that things are done to that child as opposed to being a co-creation. And that it has purpose for that child's soul. So I've done a shit ton of work on some of the most horrific moments of abuse that I can remember. And I can tell you with absolute certainty in every single one of their moments, when they're well facilitated, I don't think that that's easy to do on your own. I can intrinsically know what my soul was downloading, understanding, and incarnating, which is now absolutely part of my genius and skill set that I use for the rest of my life and to heal people far beyond myself. There is no way that I would be doing what I'm doing now with the level of had a crash course in my childhood. Like, there's no way. So having an enormous appreciation for how she taught me how to read people and how she taught me to move in and out of my body and how she taught me to understand with an absolute clarity emotion and how to move with it and how to provoke it. Like, she taught me energy in the form of emotion with such pristine clarity that I don't really know I could count the people on my hand that I know have the level of clarity from an embodied and energetic perspective that I have with emotion. And that's come out of being a child of abuse. So I can see that she gifted me what I now use as a career. And I can see that she gifted me an enormous capacity to be able to live the life I want to live that has always been anti-culture. I've always swum upstream. I've never relied on anyone, still don't. So when shit gets hard for me, getting someone to help me is the very last thing that I think of. Yes, that has its drawbacks, but it has fucking benefits that have served me and continue to serve me, like Sfigure Business. That's not an accident. I have cultivated a set of skills where it doesn't feel too hard. And if it's hard, I can strategize like a motherfucker. She gifted me that.
Because your survival depended on it.
Right. I don't rely on anyone. Now, I'm not saying that's the best practice, because that's part of the feminine teachings and how you cultivate a really beautiful relationship. But when it comes to navigating my own life, holding and validating my own existence, experience, and worth, I never looked outside of myself for that.
Yeah.
Ever. I never had to check with her, am I okay? I never had to go, is this the right decision? Ever. It was always me navigating my own life because I'd always had to. So this enormous amount of survival skills that she gave me and this enormous amount of capacity to run a household, to understand health and emotion and hold all of that, I was doing that at 5. So I love the life that I live now. And if the skill set that I needed to live it now and for the rest of 15 years, only 15 years out of my entire life, of these deep experiences that cultivated a very specific skill set, man, I'm grateful. I wouldn't change a piece of it. So every time in my day-to-day life now that she says, does, triggers something in me, I always do 2 things. One is I ask myself why I needed this reminder now. Is this because I needed to be reminded of why my values are as important to me as they are? Or is it another invitation into what did this gift me? Instead of, oh God, you're so wrong. Okay, hang on. Well, what is she gifting me here? What is she gifting me here? So she always gifts me an expansion of my own resilience.
I love that reframe.
And I laugh because I'm like, it's diplomatic. I would love a get out of jail free card. You know, I say that I would love the mum who would come in and rescue me, and I would love some help. I would love her to acknowledge my struggle. I think that's the flip of being someone like me who does so much, is no one sees your struggle because they're so used to you surviving and coping and not complaining. You're the workhorse. So of course you're going to be fine. So I do think that I would love that. But I don't think that she's the one who's ever going to give that to me, because she can't. She comes to me to be parented. So, I don't even know what the purpose of me saying that is.
Well, I mean, how much can you love her for her limitations?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And how much does that help me love where she's come from? And that my children are the first children in my entire lineage, parents that have a strong relationship. The first ones.
Yeah.
So, you know, what a gift that is.
It's a beautiful way to see it. I really love how you've given us, we've both been able to give two different perspectives. And from there, you, listener, can perhaps find your own story.
And the starting places into that. And if you want to sink your teeth in it, then come join Bridget's course. How about you give us a riff on that?
Yeah, so coming up in October is Disrupt, Revealing the Mother Wound. So it really takes the launching pad that this podcast has offered and takes you on a 5-week journey with me.
Am I finish it?
No, I'm not. I'll be really done.
How many minutes?
5 minutes.
Okay.
Just keeping it real here. Here in lockdown. It'll be
beautiful is that though? Like, also just let's be like, this is what it can be, is, oh, hey, mum, are you done? No, I'm not done yet. Okay, how long? 5 minutes? Okay, no worries. Like, it can be like that, as opposed to work takes away from my children.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. It's a great, thanks for pulling that out. Yeah. That was my 5-year-old, everybody, by the way. So 5 weeks, yes, on all things the texture, feeling, tone of the mother wound in us as a collective of women, and then also teasing it out in you, and some strategies and deep dives as both a group and individually on how to work through that and resource yourself so that you can collect and wayfind through your own experiences of parenting and also of your own self-worth. Because if we are constantly looking to either fix what we perceive as broken in us or look outside for the answers, then we're going to lower our self-worth. And if we're not valuing ourselves, the world is not valuing us. And it begins at home, it begins within. And so I think it's really profound work to do as women is to come home to what those wounds look like in us so that we can transform them into medicine, which I hope is what our stories have offered a little bit of an insight into.
Yeah, so beautiful. And we connect with you where?
Yes, at bridgetwood.life. And what about you, Jules? What have you got coming up?
I'm running Sanctum, which is a space holding and circle facilitator training 5 weeks with me beginning September 20. There's only 24 spaces available for that. So if you would like to have a look, go check it out at julietenner.love. It's called Sanctum.
Beautiful. It will be amazing. So to connect with us, you can go to nourishingthemother.com.au to watch our podcasts live streamed. You can hop onto Facebook and find our free group, Nourishing the Mother with Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner. And remember to nourish the woman to rock the family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
Thank you so much for listening. We literally couldn't do this without you. Please share this podcast with anyone you think it would be medicine for.
If you desire to integrate your learnings practically and supportively into your life, then head on over to bridgetwood.life or julietenner.love to go deeper.
And if you feel like giving back a little to this free content, please rate us on iTunes or Facebook, all of which helps the podcast reach more mamas who need this type of tonic for the soul.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.